Good morning, everybody. I'm happy to welcome you to today's online event on regenerative and organic agriculture. Same, but different. I'm Bautze, working for FiBL, which is the Research Institute of Organic Agriculture located in Switzerland, where I'm located in the soil department, working for the Climate Farm Demo project, which is also the cause why we are meeting here today, because we have this wonderful knowledge exchange sessions where we are organizing this from the soil health and biodiversity theme and the organic sector. We have different speakers here today, which will guide us through the question of regenerative and organic. What are the differences, or what are the similarities, chances, and opportunities? And during the presentations, I would like to ask you all to mute your microphones and switch off your cameras if you're not speaking. If you're, of course, later in the discussion contributing, then you're happy to unmute yourself and show your video. So without further waiting, I would like to introduce Lisa Sinnhuber from IFOAM, who will shortly present the Climate Farm Demo project so that you have a little bit of context and that we start with the presentations. So Lisa, please share your screen.
Yes, thank you, Lynn. I share my screen. So I want to give you a brief overview of Climate Farm Demo so that everyone knows what the project is about. So, okay, now I have full screen. So, yes, it's quite a long project, so a 7-year project, and it started in October 2022. So we are in the 3rd year right now, and it's also a quite big project. So with over 80 partners involved in 27 different countries. The project aims to strengthen the farmers' capacity to implement, demonstrate, and uptake climate smart farming practices across the EU, and and as a consequence that the farmers reduce significantly their greenhouse gas emissions and then also contribute to the EU climate target plan. How does the project do this? So in the 1st year of the project, Climate Farm Demo set up the network of pilot demonstration farms. On the slide, you can, so in total, there are 1,500 farms involved in the project. And on the slide, you can also see how they are distributed among the different production systems. And of this 1,500 farms involved in the project, around 20 to 25% are also organic. So how does this network work on the national level? So in each country, there's a national coordinator who coordinates the networks of farms in the country. Each network has a climate farm advisor that supports the farmers in implementing this climate smart farming practices. So in the 2nd year of the project, the climate farm advisors did together with the farmers a carbon audit, so to know the carbon, the greenhouse gas emissions of the farm and also the carbon sequestration. And they developed also together an adaptation and mitigation plan, so a plan with measures for the coming years to increase the greenhouse gas emissions and to decrease the greenhouse gas emissions and to increase the carbon sequestration. And they also, the climate farm advisors, support the farmers in the demo events that they organize. Plus, we have also 10 living labs in the farm that co-create new solutions. The project has 12 thematic areas and 7 thematic sectors. You can see them listed here on the slide. And each of these thematic areas and thematic sectors has a thematic leader, which are responsible for a knowledge exchange. So like this one today. And our today's knowledge exchange session is a collaboration between the thematic areas soil health and biodiversity, for which FiBL, so Lynn, is responsible, and the thematic sector organic sector, for which we as IFOAM are responsible in the project. So this was already my short introduction. So thank you for your attention. And then I give the floor back to Lynn because we have a lot of other interesting presentations today.
Yeah, thank you, Lisa. I think I directly hand over the microphone to Silvia Schmidt, also from IFOAM EU, so that you can give us a little bit of the context of regenerative and organic agriculture. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Lynn and Lisa, for your presentation just before. It's really a pleasure for me to be here today to speak to you a bit about how at IFOAM Organics Europe we see regenerative and organic. I'm Silvia Schmidt. I manage the policy unit at IFOAM Organics Europe. So, historically, the organic movement and the regenerative movement are extremely intertwined. And just to give you a brief overview, so the organic movement started at the end of the 19th century, we can say beginning of the 20th century, based on the 4 principles of health, ecology, fairness, and care. And regenerative agriculture, the term was sort of coined some decades later by Robert Rodale, the family that founded the Rodale Institute in the US. And really, the reason for sort of starting the regenerative movement was, one, to put even more emphasis on the soil. Of course, organic does as well, but the idea was really to regenerate the soil in the regenerative movement. And it was about bringing, giving the option to farmers to also achieve the goals of organic, but in a different way, in a less, let's say, prescriptive way. So the idea was to bring in organic principles into conventional agriculture, to make it more mainstream in a way. And so you could argue that regenerative, at least at the beginning, aims to go beyond the certification of organic that we have today. Then if you say the organic principles, the reason why it's quite complex is because we have, of course, the organic certification, we have the organic regulation that sets a basis, and the regenerative movement aims to go beyond that. But of course, the organic movement aims to go beyond that as well. So that's why it's a bit tricky to speak about, the differences and the similarities sometimes. But so what we see is that this is sort of the Google searches of regenerative for the past 10 years, and we really see quite an increase. And the question we can ask ourselves, sorry for this cough, the questions we can ask ourselves is why this increase? What is it due to? Who uses the term regenerative, and what is meant by it? And what we have seen, the reason why there's this massive increase is that it's actually quite a popular term with companies, with multinationals. Here you just see some snippets of articles, ADM, PepsiCo, Ardent Mills, but you also have Nestlé, General Mills, Unilever, again, PepsiCo, Nestlé, Knorr, McCain. So it's really quite a popular term with multinationals. And the question that we can ask ourselves there is, do these multinationals respect the meaning that regenerative held in the first place when Robert Rodale coined the term? So what we did at IFOAM a couple of years ago, we wrote a position paper, you have the link here should you be interested, on regenerative and organic, and that led us to reviewing a lot of the literature, scientific literature that has been written on the matter. So one of these articles was a literature review in itself, and the authors concluded that the wide variance in the definitions used for regenerative may lead to uncertainty about what different actors mean when they talk about this agricultural practice. So I think, you know, if we had to resume in a nutshell, we can really say that both movements are extremely close. Regenerative agriculture started from pioneers in organic agriculture. The aims are similar. The ways to get there may differ. The practices may be similar as well. The main difference is the legal protection. So the term organic is legally protected. It's the only sustainability scheme that is regulated, be it at EU level, but also, for instance, the USDA regulates it. So it's globally, let's say, regulated. And in order to be certified organic, you can simply not use synthetic pesticides or GMOs. And this is an example. And for regenerative, this is less clear. So when we were looking at these articles for our position paper, we saw that 12.4% of definitions of regenerative agricultures prohibit the use of synthetic pesticides explicitly, but all the rest don't really. Same for GMOs. It's not really clear. Sorry, it's not really clear if they're banned or not, how much they're banned. We know that, for instance, Syngenta, when they say they're doing regenerative agriculture, they do use GMOs, but probably that was not the intent of the pioneers of the regenerative movement. Another difference also, which is quite important today, and I'll develop upon it a bit more, is that organic is really process-based. So we have a whole process that leads to a certain result. While regenerative is really more outcome-based. So it's more about you want that result, and how you get there is less important. And I'm, of course, summarizing in a very basic way. I wanted to share with you this report because it was published literally yesterday. It's quite US focused, but it's a report with substantial evidence as well. And one of the practices that, let's say, regenerative prones more than organic is the no-till and reduced tillage. And this is the, let's say, agricultural practice that you can see more when speaking about regenerative agriculture. And so these are literally the conclusions from the report. I did not write them. So they say that toxic pesticides that harm soil and human health are the foundation of most conventional no-till. So yes, you don't till, but at the same time, in order to actually have a yield, you need to spread pesticides. They say that this type of farming is not regenerative, and that truly regenerative farming can actually include tillage. And then they conclude by saying that decades of research show that diversified organic is regenerative. So again, this huge interlink between organic and regenerative movements. I also wanted to bring to you the declaration on regenerative that the global organic movement agreed upon last December. The main message is really to say the movements are clearly interlinked. There's clearly synergies between the two movements, and that organic agriculture embodies regenerative principles. Further says that these two movements and actors within these two movements are natural allies, that organic should collaborate with serious regenerative actors, and of course vice versa. But then it also raises concerns over the misuse of this term regenerative, and how sometimes regenerative claims are not very well substantiated and may mislead consumers or even policymakers. So what as IFOAM Organics Europe we prone in terms of this, regenerative and organic debate is that, again, the movements are extremely close, but that this greenwashing is not acceptable. It leads to consumer confusion. It really leads to unfair market conditions. Now more and more we see also regenerative being certified on products, on food products. But again, it's not clear how regenerative maybe these products are. So regenerative, in our view, should really be used in terms of what it was meant to be used in the beginning. And for instance, we have a good example from the US, which is the ROC, the Regenerative Organic Certification, which is truly regenerative, which truly goes beyond the organic certification. So it's more in line with what the regenerative movement pioneers intended. I want to end my intervention with a couple of slides about something that is quite important at EU level at the moment, and is linked to regenerative, and I thought it's important to bring to your attention. And that is the whole debate around sustainability reporting. In the Vision for Agriculture and Food that was published mid-February, there's a whole chapter about the Commission will develop a sustainability benchmarking methodology on a voluntary basis for now. But this is something that was also asked by the Strategic Dialogue, this sort of advisory body of the European Commission formed by stakeholders. So it's this idea of on-farm reporting becoming extremely relevant. We know that processors and retailers demand to have data on farm, sustainability-related data on farm. And this is in order to say, well, we are sustainable, we're sourcing from sustainable sources, etc., etc. So what we see more and more is that such data, farm data, becomes either through law or sort of mandatory because market partners ask for it. And these are just a couple of examples of terms you will maybe have heard, which are founded on this idea of needing more data. So maybe the most known at this point is the CSRD, the Corporate Social Responsibility Directive. And this is really, yes, this is really to enable the actors at the end of the supply chain to be able to say, okay, we're doing this and this for sustainability. But so, of course, as IFOAM Organic Syrup, we welcome this development. We think that, companies should be able to report on the sustainability efforts that they do. At the same time, what we see is that there's really a bit of a silo thinking. There's really a bit of an idea of only looking, for instance, at carbon farming and not looking at all the other elements that compose sustainability. And so, as I was saying, organic tends to be more process-based and regenerative tends to be more outcome-based. So regenerative is already collecting data for 2-3 important data points for regenerative, while organic is less advanced in doing that. But one thing that we do say is that these 2-3 points will probably not be enough to have a holistic view of the true sustainability impact of a farming practice. Because as you can see from the scheme, organic really has many different benefits. And for instance, biodiversity is never counted at this point. Animal welfare, extremely rarely counted as well. So this is a bit the challenge we're facing and the opportunity as well, because it doesn't mean that here it is. So organic already has all the cards in place to be able to provide this information. Consumers know organic, it is protected by law, it already has a massive certification system, which means that data is already collected. So so all the, let's say, cards on the table are there, but at the same time, sustainability reporting really needs to adequately integrate farming systems that are sustainable, clearly sustainable, that have proven their benefits in how they account for sustainability, and at the same time, as organic movement, there may be a need to maybe collect even more data than we are already doing. Okay, I think that was it from my side. I hope it was interesting for you, and I give it back to Lynn then.
Yeah, thank you very much. So as you have to leave, unfortunately, at 10, I would like to open the floor for some discussions or thoughts, or maybe questions for Silvia for the next 10 minutes, if there are any. I saw a comment in the chat from Daniel Fröhlich. What about the consumers? So how I mean, the consumer role is quite important in shaping the agriculture in our society. So maybe you can elaborate first on this, but to the participants, if you have any other questions, please feel free to raise them now to Silvia.
Yeah, for the consumers, I mean, I think the consumers have sort of a right to know exactly what they're buying, right? So if the claim is, if the product says regenerative and it's truly regenerative, fair enough. But the actually, we encourage that completely. The challenge is when a product says it's regenerative, but because there's no legislation backing that up, then maybe it's not. And then the consumer doesn't even know, okay, am I buying real regenerative or am I buying sort of not as regenerative as I think? So absolutely, I think consumers drive sustainability. In every questionnaire, when you ask about when you ask about, you know, the sustainability wants of consumers, it's always
Is it just me or
No,
now
it's also
you're
me.
back, Silvia? I think now you're back, yeah? No?
No.
Okay. Yeah, so maybe we use the time in between. I will share a link at the chat where you can log in at Slido, where we have some short questions for you, and hopefully Silvia will get back. So let's see.
I did put my hand up. I don't know whether you've seen my hand is up.
I have seen it, but if Silvia is not there, I'm not sure how.
It's probably a question more widely. Oh no, she's back. Okay, I'll stop for a minute.
Back. Yeah. Super.
I'm very sorry. We're experiencing clearly Wi-Fi issues in our office, so
okay.
Nothing I can do about that. Apologies.
No worries. Kate,
I had finished replying to the other question, so
super. So maybe Kate, would you like to go ahead?
Yeah, thank you very much. Firstly, you're doing brilliantly well with your English. I'm hugely impressed the way you can all communicate so eloquently with quite complicated terminology for all of us to understand. So thank you for that. It's a question about America, really. I mean, that report, I think I recall Silvia saying it had come out of the US. My brother's a US citizen. I'm very frustrated with what's going on over there in terms of climate change initiatives and Elon Musk and all the rest of it. Do we see America's potential repositioning of some of these aspects in the world market as a real threat to both organic, regenerative farming, traditional methods? I mean, he's clearly wanting to get trade deals at any cost. I mean, how do you feel, Silvia, about regenerative farming, organic farming, which does have status in the US? I have bought organic food there. I mean, do we see some of these things coming under threat and then others will follow America?
I mean, it's a good question, and I don't have the crystal ball, obviously. But I did ask this question a couple of weeks ago to our US, let's say, counterparts, and for now they're not that worried, actually. Because it's a bit, I mean, Trump has not, or the Trump administration has not yet carried out anything from what they were saying a couple of weeks ago, very tangible in terms of going against organic. So for now, they were quite okay. When it comes to potentially having these tariffs, that would have been clearly a challenge on both sides of the Atlantic, actually. So when that was the case, there were a lot of reactions, both from the organic movement in Europe as well as from the organic movement in the US, saying, well, we really hope that diplomatic channels can be used in order to not impose this burden on both sides. But yeah, so for now, they were not that worried, so we're not that worried for now. But yeah, let's see what goes on in the next months. Of course, it's changing every day. There are new decrees every day, so it's very difficult to predict.
Thank you very much.
Are there further questions to Silvia. What about transparency of regenerative agriculture? I mean, how we can trust of report from companies was asked in the chat. So maybe you can share your insights on this as well.
I will reply by saying that the Commission is currently developing a legislation on green claims, which is aimed at substantiating and verifying the substantiation behind a green claim. So the hope would be, but for now, let's see if that will happen. So this legislation is currently in trilogues, which means that we don't have the final text yet, which means that we can't really know what the impact will be. But hopefully, this will ensure that if a regenerative claim is made, indeed, it has been substantiated in some way, and there can be trust for that. But this is a bit too soon to say whether it will actually work because we don't have the final text. It will be in June.
Super. So I don't want you to come late to your appointment with the policymakers. So I would like to thank you very much for your time and your insights on the political debates currently conducted in the European policy parts. And now we would like to shift more to the practical application of how thank you so much, Silvia. How the regenerative agriculture can be combined with organic, or how this is done in the practical part. And those of you that are part of the Climate Farm Demo project and the Climate Smart Advisory project know that we have to do quite some small monitoring of who's in the room. So therefore, I would like to shortly ask you to join the Slido, and so that we can see a little bit who's here, so to say. So this is, now you should see the joining slide. For those of you, you can keep the link then open. I will just ask one question now, but later during the discussions, we will also follow up a little bit there. I hope it works. Maybe Lisa, you can give me a small hint if it's working, yeah?
Yeah, you just have to allow the questions. Yeah.
Okay, super. So then I would like to share the question. Okay, super, it's working. Just very briefly, where you see yourself, if you belong more to the, let's say, practical part, research and innovation, advisory service, policy sector. If you feel yourself associated with all of these because you work very interdisciplinarity, yeah. I will just wait a few seconds there, but during this time, Alfred Grand can already prepare himself for presenting. Okay, so we see we are quite a large number on research, which is good when it comes together with a practical implementation. That's super. Okay, so I will leave this open, but would like to ask Alfred Grand now to share his screen so that we can start with his presentation.
Okay, so I hope you can see my presentation.
Perfect. Yes, thank you.
Okay, so very warm welcome from my side. My name is Alfred. Thanks for the organizers to invite me to share a bit of what we are doing on our farm. It's a bit complicated title, the Grand Farm Case Study. Soil management when combining organic and regenerative agriculture. Okay, it starts jumping around. So I consider myself always as trained by earthworms because I have a very simple education as a winemaker in a school. I didn't attend any university, but when I started to get into vermicomposting, composting with the help of earthworms, I also got into science, and from there we developed our system. So we have two companies actually. One is Grand, where we do the composting, vermicomposting. The other one is Grand Farm, which is, I tried to remove it. Yeah, Grand Farm, which is an organic arable field farm and vegetable farm. And within Grand Farm, we have a market garden called Grand Garden. So I would like to give you a bit of an overview of what we do, how we do it, and what an impact it has on climate mitigation, but as well on adaptation to climate change. So for Vermigrant, we are producing earthworm compost as a signature product. So not we, but our earthworms are producing vermicompost actually. That's important because we as humans, we cannot make soil. So this is very important for me. We as humans, I always say we can fly to the moon, but we cannot make soil. Unfortunately, my slides jump and I always have to go back. Sorry for that. We also produce peat-free soil substrates, compost extracts, soil amendments, and we conduct research here. So some examples is seed coating with the microbiome of the earthworm. So we make a compost extract, a fluid extract, we coat the seed, and then we can bring back life to the soil. So that's really important and really helps also to be more efficient and more effective. What we also do is we conduct research in combining biochar in vermicomposting, and we have seen really good results in that. Feeding as part of the food recipe biochar to the earthworm really helps on one side to mitigate climate change, but also because you can store the carbon, you can sequester the carbon in the soil, but also to adapt to climate change because you have a better water retention, water storage capacity, and so on, and the plants grow more healthy, more stronger. So that also helps very much. At Grand Farm, we are a research and demonstration farm. So we are certified according to the EU organic standards, but also to the Austria standards, and since last year also to the regenerative organic certification that was already introduced by the former speaker. We are regenerative, so because we are certified. We cannot only claim that we are regenerative, but we can also prove it. We were the first market garden within the European Union being regenerative certified. We also do on the farm roller crimper trials. I'm really sorry for this, but yeah, PowerPoint is trying to trick me here in a way. We are doing roller crimper trials since 2015. My friend Jeff Moyer, the former CEO of the Rodale Institute, developed this technique where you roll down a cover crop and seed at the same time your cash crop. And this is a very, very good in regard to mitigating climate change because you sequester a lot of carbon. You do not mineralize carbon from the soil because you do no-till. But you also sequester a lot of carbon through the straw that you, the rice straw that you provide to the earthworms, to the soil. We also conduct agroforestry. So agroforestry is also a very good method. It means bringing back bushes and trees, wooden structure to the arable land. This is also very important because there is a new study coming out from Boku last year that says in these hedges, we conduct agroforestry as hedges. And within these hedges, you can store 20 tons, 20 to 25 tons per hectare of carbon dioxide and per year in an average of 80 years. So that's really huge, considering mitigating climate change, but it's also adapting to climate change, because here on the left picture, you can see on the left side of the picture, there is the hedge, and the hedge reduces the wind speed in our area. So reduced wind speed means also reduced evaporation, and therefore it helps to grow the vegetables. It's also adapting to climate change. So Grand Garten, this is the third department of our operation. It's part of Grand Farm. It's a market garden, and within the market gardening is a rediscovered form of food production, especially vegetable production, where you grow a lot of a huge variety of crops. Like we grow 60 different crops and do nearly everything by hand. You can see on the picture on the right side, there is one walk behind tractor that we use. So we use very little fossil fuel. And what we do is that we grow a diverse vegetable production. We do summer and winter production without heating, without additional lighting. We grow 60 different crops. We grow even more than 150 varieties. We have a 50-week sales program, so we grow all over and sell all over the year, and we do research. So the research that we do is, for example, lucerne mulch, and you can see 2 rows of zucchini here. And the left row, the big plants are with lucerne as a mulch, and on the right side you see hemp straw. So you can clearly see the difference in the results of the crop. But we also did some research on it. It was an operational group. And when you look at the numbers, we increased the organic matter within 2 years from 5.1% organic matter up to 7.8% organic matter. So that's really huge in regard to sequestering carbon on one side, but it's mitigating climate change, but it's also adapting to climate change, because the mulch reduces evaporation, it stops soil erosion, and so on. So it gives you a lot of beneficial characteristics, and it feeds the earthworms. And the earthworms, when you feed the earthworms, the water infiltration rate gets higher. So it's again adapting to climate change, because what we see is that we have these long period of droughts and then heavy rainfalls. So like last year we had 330 millimeter of rain within 5 days. That's more than half of the yearly precipitation. And that's really amazing to see that even after these heavy rains, this flooding, we could harvest. It stopped raining on Monday and we harvested carrots on Tuesday. So this is really market gardening. It's a very resilient system, very resilient. It's adapting to climate change. What we also can show is that we have here a master thesis from the University of Life Science in Vienna, where we can show that we have they checked out the protists, so the guys, the microbes in the soil which feed on bacteria and fungi. And what we have seen is here that we see as much protist on if you compare the 2 green bars. The one is in market gardening, so it's at Grand Garten, the left one, and the right green bar is in a field margin which was not touched for 40 years. So what I want to say is we can show that we can grow a lot of produce, because market gardening is really a bio-intensive production system. So we can grow a lot of produce, but at the same time can regenerate the soil. So that's really important. And we have a soil quality that is comparable to natural soil. or soil that wasn't touched for 40 years. So very productive and at the same time super regenerative. So what we try to achieve on our farm and in our market garden is future-proof food systems, food production systems. That's really what we want to do as a research farm, as a demonstration farm. One of our slogans is we grow food, soil, and people. And we do that at the same time, and we do it with nature-based solutions. So we look at the plants and we say, okay, what does a plant want? And if you look at these two pictures, you can see that the plants, the roots of the plants always go with the earthworm burrows. So where the earthworms are active, you can clearly see that on the right picture. There where the earthworms are active, you can see there also are the roots. And where there is no earthworm active, there is no root. So what we go is what we call nature-based solutions. And I want to, if I still have a few minutes, I want to give you a few examples of what we call the earthworm effect. So here you can see, I hope it works, you can see two different fields just across the road. So the right one was our field and the left one is the neighbor field. So the reason is because we have earthworms, we have better water infiltration. The next is after a thunderstorm. Here you see the field on the right side of the street. And I don't know why this doesn't really work. And then you see my field. Here you can see the earthworm effect from on the left picture. You see how much biomass you have in regards to leaves. And then at the beginning of October, when we harvest the soybeans, you can already see how little leaf is left. You can already see the bare soil because all the leaves are already incorporated in the soil by the earthworms. So you can imagine how efficient the earthworms work in this case. Here you see some earthworms. 1, 2, 3. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah, so within 11 seconds, you can see a lot of earthworms. And here you also see an effect that we are now working with 2 research projects on. On the left side, you see a plowed field, and just 3 meters aside, where we applied mulch, you can see that the depth of the topsoil is growing into the subsoil. Okay, so that's it from my side. Sorry again for the technical issues. Yeah, I don't know why this happened. Maybe it's a new version of PowerPoint. Okay.
Thank you very much, Alfred. I could follow. I hope the others could follow as well. That was very interesting. We now have basically the idea to have a second presentation and afterwards a discussion. So, but if you have questions already now, then I would like to ask you to put them in the chat and store them there in the chat for a second. After our second speaker of Philipp Birker, who I met at the COP in Sharm el-Sheikh in Egypt. And I was quite impressed by him because he works with very different farmers across all over Europe with the Climate Farmer Network. And he's going to present the network a little bit and how there the regenerative aspects are considered and dealt with. And Philipp, I think you're there. I've seen you. I don't see you now, but I've seen you somewhere.
I'm here, and yeah, huge pleasure to be speaking after Alfred as well. I think perfect programming to hear from one of our region pioneers and on the ground. And then I will be giving you a bit more of a meta perspective, which I think will complement it perfectly. Cool.
Super. Thank
Do you
you.
see my screen in full screen?
Yes. Yes.
Amazing. So yeah, as Lynn said, I had the pleasure of being in the regenerative agriculture field for the last 5 years, and I will be sharing with you today a little bit the learnings and the experiences that we have made in the last 5 years. And also I will touch upon the similarities, I think, with the organic movement. So just a quick background for myself, in case you're wondering how I got into this. I grew up in a farming context in Western Germany, in a village close to Aachen. And then I did what most young people did. I left the countryside. I spent 10 years in Amsterdam and Berlin. I built up a few impact startups. And then I really felt the calling back to nature. So in 2017, me and a few friends, we bought this tiny little village, which you can see there, which was abandoned for about 50 years. And the idea was really to build up a community there. And we also had a few hectares of land that essentially came with the village. And that is what caused me to look back into agriculture, first permaculture and then regenerative agriculture. And when I started looking deeper into our current agri-food system, what I found was quite shocking. I mean, I think most of us here can agree that what we're experiencing currently is a massive system failure on all accounts. We're failing our farmers. We have lost 20% of our farmers just in the last 5 years, going from 11 to 9 million. Farmers are protesting on the streets. They are experiencing the highest rates of depression that we have ever experienced. And yeah, there's basically not really a future pathway for farmers within the current system. At the same time, we're also failing our planet. Agriculture is responsible for 24% of our greenhouse gas emissions, and it's the main driver of biodiversity loss. I think this is one of those that always shocks me, you know, that the way how we're growing our food is killing the biodiversity on our planet. It's just so absurd. And now what you often hear is, but it's making money. But it really isn't, right? Like, it's making money for a few very large corporations, and especially for the agrochemical industry. But farmers are definitely not making a lot of money. And if we're looking at the real cost of our agricultural system, which is estimated at 15 trillion US dollars, then we're actually losing more money than we're making in the end. And now regenerative agriculture seems to be quite a prominent way to get out of this crisis. I think Alfred already pointed perfectly at the capacities of building soil health, of through that increasing climate change resilience, increasing soil water storage capacity, and also tackling issues like, for example, the rising fertilizer and fuel costs, and yeah, also just the social crisis of farmers. Because through regenerative agriculture, we believe we can also make farming more attractive again for the general public and get more people to come to farms. And as climate farmers and personally, we believe that humans are a part of a wider ecosystem. We are part of nature, of course, but we have lost our connection with the rest of the planet. And we believe that that is what led to our current climate crisis. And so our vision is that humans find their place again within the larger ecosystem, and that they can live up to their potential as a keystone species, an honorable title that we share among others with beavers. But they are doing a much better job at living up to their potential than we do at the moment. And we also believe that the way how we're growing our food is the most reasonable way to get there. It's the way how we are interacting directly with the planet that we're living on. And so we are fully focused on building the infrastructure to scale regenerative agriculture in Europe. And now, I have to admit, I went to business school. And at business school, what you really learn is you should laser focus on one thing and get that one thing right. So initially, when we started looking at Regen Ag, we thought, well, farmers sequester carbon. There's a voluntary carbon market. So we just pay farmers for storing carbon in the soil. And through that, we scale Regen Ag. Luckily, what I did then is I decided to go out on farms. And I once spent 1 year working on some of the most advanced region farms back in 2018 and 19. I didn't find many back then, but I spent 1 year working on 60 different farms. And what I realized afterwards is the situation is a lot more complex. Farmers are embedded within a wider system, and just carbon credits alone would never do the job of actually scaling regenerative agriculture or even remotely supporting farmers. And so what we did is we started looking at the wider system around farmers and that farmers are operating within. and we did what is called a systems mapping. You can find the systems map on our website. I think was in this context, it's a bit too much to go out of it. But as you can imagine, there's quite a few blockers that are preventing farmers from transitioning towards regenerative agriculture, even though, in our experience, many want to. I will just zoom into one little loop, which I'm sure is no surprise to anyone who is in this call. We currently have a very dominant system, which is called conventional, or as we call it, extractive agriculture. That system is very much driven and created by the agrochemical corporations. So those are heavily influencing the policy sector, which then leads again that subsidies to farmers, specifically through the CAP, is mostly driven towards maximization of production. So we measure farmers exclusively on how much food do they produce. We don't look at what are the costs of that production to our wider ecosystem. And also, I think a very underlooked fact is we don't look at the quality of the produce. I believe that a lot of the food that we are eating nowadays is not only making our planet sick, it's also making us sick. And the only thing that is profiting from this is the agrochemical industry, which is making a lot of money from this, and through this is able to lobby again for more policy which goes in that direction. So this is one of those loops of doom, which we're unfortunately finding ourselves in at the moment. Now, if you have been looking at system thinking in your life, which is something I would highly recommend to do, it can be a lot of fun. And the queen of systems thinking is Donella Meadows. And she created this, which she calls the levers of systemic change. And the interesting thing is that even though most people are hyped about metrics and data, they are at the lower end. First of all, we need to change the culture that we're existing in, and we need to change the structure which we're existing in. And this is also where we started with climate farmers. So the very first thing that we did is we connected those initial pioneers of Region Ag that I visited, because many of them felt lonely. Many of them did not have any other farmers around them supporting them in what they're doing, and they really were looking for a community. And so we organized a conference in the world's only owned farmers castle in southern Germany, and we brought these people together. We brought these people also together on farms and online, and we started building what I believe is currently the biggest regenerative agriculture farming community in Europe. And we have farmers pretty much all over Europe. We have quite a focus point in Southern Europe, because this is just where the effects of climate change are also the hardest. But yeah, it's quite spread all throughout the continent, as you can see. The map is also on our website if you want to take a closer look later. And then the second part is the structural part. And here we have, of course, EU policy as being a main driver, and we are really happy that in 2022 we were able to successfully lobby for the nature restoration law together with the Club of Rome, which we believe is creating the basis for farmers to finally get paid for building up biodiversity. We also are very proud of EARA, which is the European Alliance for Regenerative Agriculture, that developed out of our second Farmers Climate Conference and is now a direct lobbying arm for farmers in Brussels, achieving amazing results already. And we are working very closely with them and trying to influence the current negotiations on the common agricultural policy. And now we come to the part, which is usually the part that people are most interested in, but it is usually the easiest to get funding for as well, which is the metrics and the practical part. And I think this is probably also the point where we're starting to differentiate a little bit between the organic and the regenerative movement from my perspective, and very happy to be told differently here. But I think in terms of the movement building and the drive and the world that we want to see, I think there's a lot of overlap between organic and between regenerative. The difference is, and the thing that I find difficult is that, from my understanding, organic is mostly based on practices and not really measuring outcomes. And at Climate Farmers, we believe that in order to really scale Region Ag and to change our food system, we need to measure the outcomes that farmers are achieving. We need this, first of all, to prevent greenwashing. I think we can all agree that regenerative agriculture is right now one of the terms that is most being used for greenwashing by especially large corporations. I think it's a crime, and it really pains me that people like Syngenta and Bayer are talking about regenerative agriculture, which have nothing to do with the term and have no interest in it. And we also believe that we should reward truly regenerative farmers for the ecosystem services which they're achieving for all of us, and that we should ensure transparency throughout the supply chain. So as Climate Farmers, what we have developed together with our farmers is a measurement framework for regenerative agriculture, where we measure ecological, economical, and social outcomes on farms. And the entire framework is a bit too big to explain it all, but just so you can see one example, for soil health, for example, we have the categories of soil function, ecosystem processes, and plant health. And then for soil function, we have as indicators structure, mineral balance, organic matter, water infiltration, and vegetation cover. And then as metrics, we would have soil aggregate stability, soil compaction, organic matter, water infiltration, and many more. And then from these scores, we basically do work with farmers by doing a baseline measurement and then doing a 1-year measurement, 2-year measurement, and 3-year measurement afterwards. So we basically just measure what was the baseline that we saw and what was the 1-year measurement that we had and what were the changes. And if we see that the farmer is increasing in the scores, then we basically regard them as regenerative because they have outcomes which we can measure. And here the philosophy that we have behind this is that we do pick up every farmer where they are. And this is now maybe a point where you might disagree, but we think, for example, that also farmers that have used, for example, glyphosate in the past should be able to be rewarded for positive change that they're seeing. So we pick up farmers where they are. And if they are toning down the chemical inputs that they're having, and if we see regenerative outcomes on their field, then we do see them as regenerative farmers. We expect all of them to phase out chemicals within a certain time frame, but we also aware of farming realities, and we think it is unrealistic of farmers to expect to go from 10 to 0 in one batch. I think this is not possible. We would love to see, of course, regenerative organic farmers in the end. We're also big fans of ROC, even though, as far as I know, it's also practice and not outcome-based. But we're also aware that most farmers would have a very hard time staying in business within the current food system if we would expect them to drop all chemicals right away. And what we hope to do is to really move in a direction where the entire farming system is regenerative. And I became a dad last year, and my hope is that in 10 or 15 years, my son is going to ask me, "You put glyphosate on your fields? Like, what the hell were you thinking?" And this is the future where we all want to move towards, I think. And now I would be happy to answer some questions.
Thank you very much, Philipp. So as you also have to leave, so
in 15 minutes.
This is maybe also a result of like seeing how regenerative agriculture is like very vivid at the moment. Huh? So this is also interesting to see. I would like to open the floor for some questions, maybe first to Philipp, and then we also have the time for Alfred and come together as a discussion. I see some questions in the chat. So one of the question was, how does the method of tillage affect their regenerative score? And do you encourage a combination of no-till, low disturbance cultivations? Well,
yeah, I mean, this is always one of those things, right? I think the holy grail is definitely no-till and no chemicals. And at the same time, there's very few farmers which are achieving this within our current system. And I think that is an indication of the system failure that we're having, right? The reason why farmers are not able to do this is because they're not rewarded for their ecosystem services. They're not rewarded for nutrient-dense food. And so they have to focus on high yields. And if you do no-till and no chemicals, yes, your yield will likely go down. Be okay, because at the same time, you will have a much more healthy soil, you will have a much more positive effect on the system, and you will produce much more healthy food. And if we would start rewarding that, then a lot more farmers could be doing this at the moment. In the current system, we mostly see farmers doing any kind of level of degree of variation between low tilling and low chemical inputs. And again, I think farmers know best their own context. Everything is context specific, and all that we can do is measure that overall they're having a positive effect on the system that they're existing in.
So maybe a follow-up question to the both of you then on this is, I mean, Alfred, you're very on the practical as a farmer, and Philipp is more, I see, in this advisory work maybe, and also this like crossing borders to the politic areas as well. So how do you how do you talk then with the farmers and convince them to shift towards the regenerative agriculture when it's likely, for example, that yields are decreasing in the first years?
Do you want to go first, Alfred?
Okay. Well, we as a research farm, we do not focus heavily on increasing yields or increasing efficiency, because this is done by most other researchers out there. And that's a very important thing that we have to do. We are more focusing on stabilizing yield. And when we implement a method, then we say, okay, what does this method, which effect does this method have on a systemic level? So on mitigating climate change, adapting to climate change, stopping the loss of biodiversity, regenerating the soil, keeping the water body clean, keeping the air clean, adding value to the region. Resilience is a huge topic. So we really see the systemic effect. And we are a demonstration farm, not only a research farm, because what we have seen is that with research only, there is a lot of research going on, but then the research doesn't meet the farmers. And we do a demonstration farm because we have on one side lots of farmers, but we also have lots of consumers, starting with kindergarten and schools and students and scientists and also political decision makers on the farm.
Yeah. Love that. I was yesterday at one of our farms in Germany, and they also have a kindergarten on the farm. And I was like, oh my God, like this should be the future, you know? Just to very quickly clarify, in our experience, regenerative agriculture does not lead to your lower yields. So this is not the case. I think this is a very common misconception. What I was saying is, if a farmer would do no tilling and no chemical inputs, then the probability of lower yields is rather high. And because they cannot afford that, they don't do that. So just to make that clear. But for example, a lot of times what we're doing is integration of trees into the farming system. So integration of agroforestry within the system, which essentially is an investment which you do early on. It almost directly affects the ecosystem positively. And after several years, of course, you will also get the rewards from the tree crops, right? So this is one, for example, where you don't have any yield drop or anything like this. You rather have more yield over the course of time after initial investment costs. A similar thing is in animal management. One of my favorite things is holistic grazing, right? It's just the way how we manage our cows can drastically shift cows from being negative to the climate to potentially having a positive climate effect, or integration of other animals. So in the end, for me, the way how I would love to see farms actually is to move away from this is arable crops, this is tree crops, this is animals, but an integrated mixed farming system. If we look at nature, then what you almost always have is you have a diversity of plants and animals operating in synchronicity with each other. And that is also what we try to push our farms towards more diversity of incomes, through that more resilience, and also more diversity of essentially plant and animal life.
And from your perspective, is that something where the farmers are already doing this anyway and are very eager to say, like, okay, let's start with this, and it's just a question of educating and advisory, or is it something which really needs this mind shift perspective for farming advisory service as well?
I mean, I think we're still a niche, right? I think this is very important to say, right? Like when I started looking into this field, I had a hard time finding even 100 farmers who are doing regen ag or identifying as doing regen ag in 2018, 2019. Now we think there's between 100 and 200,000 somewhere on the region path. So this is 1 to 2% of all farmers. For many farmers, they are still very stuck in the current system, right? They often don't have cash flow, so they don't have the capacities to invest into the potential machinery that would be necessary, or potential tree crops, or potential advisory. Just as an example, for example, we did a summer school for regen farmers, and I think now 4 years ago, and the costs were 2,000 euros, and we had 3 farmers reach out to us if we could borrow them the money until the harvest comes in, because they did not have the cash flow to put those 2,000 euros down. that moment, but they really wanted to participate. And I think this is a number that really signifies the situation that farmers are in, right? They have assets, of course. They have land, which has value, but the actual cash flow, which is needed to be having the flexibility to change, is just not present. And they're very much left alone with that, right? No one is willing to pick up the bill. Everybody loves to talk about it. The big corporates like to make commitments of sourcing 20, 30, 40% region ag. I have no idea where they get that produce from, because the farmers don't exist that can supply them with that produce. And the corporates are not supporting them financially from everything that I have been seeing so far. And that is the big issue that we're having. And then another big issue is the lack of people who actually know how regenerative agriculture works and can support farmers in their transition. Unfortunately, we see a lot of people jumping on the hype train and calling themselves region ag consultants that have absolutely no idea what they're talking about. And then I have farmers that tell me, yeah, we had this guy coming and it didn't work. And I'm like, what the fuck did he tell you? So we are right now developing a region agronomy training to exactly target that issue to train. And Alfred is actually part of that as one of the training farms, where we're going to send basically young agronomists to really learn from people who are walking the way and who know what they're doing. Because we really see that we first of all need to safeguard it and that we need to train the next generation in it. Because on the education level as well, there's no region ag master right now, right? There's way too little organic education. And there's even less, there's no regenerative education outside of Schumacher College. So we're trying to work together with Wageningen University, among others. Bukoviana is another front runner here to potentially push for a region ag master so that people can actually, at university level, already learn about it and not get indoctrinated by the agrochemical industry from the very first day onwards.
Yeah, super. So Alfred, how was it for you? How did you then gathered all of your knowledge about regenerative agriculture, and how did you dealt with the cost issue for shifting your practices on your farm? Was that different because you were already organic, or?
Well, regarding costs, we still have a hard time, I have to say. It's still not easy and really always difficult as a region farmer and as a farmer who tries to also not to be afraid of failing, because that's also what you have to do. And I think that should be the job of a research farm, yeah? To lean out of the window and also be open to fail and try things that are quite outstanding or maybe stupid sometimes, or crazy. Yeah, let's call it crazy. That shouldn't be done by any farmer. But still, because you asked also about how farmers learn, I think and what Philipp says, I fully agree. So it's really difficult. We just, if you ask for conventional practices, you can ask like, okay, how to grow corn in Portugal and how to grow grapes in Spain and how to do dairy in this area. So we know everything how to do it in a conventional way, because we did like 70 years of research, and the industry helped with it, and the universities and everyone and the states. But now we have to switch to regenerative. And what we have, the problem is that we cannot, there is no consultant who can tell you, okay, how to do this in this area and do this in this area, because there's so many different plant production systems and so many different pedoclimatic situations. So my idea about it is, and as we already said, a lot of farmers do trials at home. So they do trials on their farm every year. So they say, okay, let's try this variety and compare it with this variety. Let's try this method, and this time we did it this way. So my idea is to use the GAP, the Common Agriculture Policy, to support farmers in research. When I say, okay, we give you like 500 euro and you do this research project. Very simple, to say, okay, what you need is a concept, like a 2-pager, what you want to do, and you need a partner. And the partner can be a consultant, it can be university, it can be Chamber of Agriculture, it can be the industry, whoever. So 2 pairs of eyes looking at the same topic. And then you do this small trial on your farm, on one field, or with 5 cows or whatever. And then you have to upload your results on a platform. And so we get like 10,000, 20,000, 50,000 results every year. And then we let AI run over it and say, okay, that's bullshit. Get rid of these results, get rid of this result. That's not realistic. But then we can gather within a few years, we can gather a lot of information from a lot of different production systems. Because as it is now, when you ask regenerative consultants and say, okay, how do I do this? They say, well, we cannot say exactly, but there is a YouTube video from a guy who did it already, but in a completely different situation and a completely different climate. And let's check out this YouTube video and see what you can learn from it. Yeah, and then try. And that's not the way we can move forward. So we really have to find innovative solutions how we can gain more knowledge as quickly as possible. And we cannot rely on the industry because the industry is not interested in this research.
Yeah, so thank you for this. As a person doing a lot of practical research, my heart is is happy to hear that more research should be conducted on the farms and with involving farmers as well. Yeah, maybe Philipp, because you have to leave in a few minutes. One more question, like, could you elaborate a little bit also on the costs for the monitoring and the scientific evaluation of regenerative farming? And I would also be very interested on like your ideas about the framework of phasing out the agrochemicals. So if you could elaborate a little bit on this and how research maybe can also support you. We have quite a high number of researchers here today. So if you have something for the researchers in the room, then please raise the concerns now. And
Yeah, happily. And I mean, just to point that out, we're currently involved in 3 large-scale EU Horizon projects. So we love to collaborate with researchers and to bring the theoretical knowledge to the practical side. So I think one project that I'm very excited about, and I think FiBL is in it as well, is soil health benchmarks, which is, I think, doing amazing groundbreaking work. And basically our soil health indicators for regeneration are taken from benchmarks. So we are one of the applied cases from soil health benchmarks. I'm a huge fan of the soil science department of Wageningen and Rachel Creamer. And yeah, we're always open for that. So we're very happy to connect those two worlds. In our case, in terms of the indicators and the measurement, we basically work with labs together. So we work with soil samples. We work with labs together. We always use the same partners there. We have in total 34 different indicators, which we're measuring on every farm. The costs are depending on the cost of an agronomist, basically, that goes to the farm, between 1,000 to 2,000 euros, I would say. Most of the time, we are able to do this through corporate partners. So we have a partnership with HelloFresh, which you maybe know, which is a large company from Germany, with crowd farming, which is a direct farmer to consumer platform. These companies have an interest in actually telling their consumers a story of where their produce comes from, which makes it for them interesting to do this. We also have a partnership with Lush, for example. So it's usually either the really forward-thinking and good large corporates. I think like Patagonia, we don't work with them, but they're another one that's really pushing rock, for example, forward. Or it's often the brands which are working very directly with consumers together. And sometimes we also have farmers themselves. But this is usually more a whole new spectrum that we see of regen ag farmers, which is people that make their wealth somewhere else and then came to the conclusion that regen ag is pretty cool and start kind of regen farms from scratch, which is an interesting new field, which we also see emerging. Next to that, the other big driver that we see for regen ag is usually, I have to say, young people taking over the farm from their parents. Which is a very big one as well. But they very often have a lot more cost constraints than the side entrance farmers.
Yeah, super. Thank you very much. And maybe, Alfred, do you have some concrete ideas how researchers could support you then directly? I mean, you mentioned the idea that CAP payments would be lead to the other sectors. To the farmers directly?
Yeah, we have a huge network of scientists and advisors, thankfully, and that's really helpful because as a research farm we say we are the first research farm in Austria, research and demonstration farm, and that some people would say, well, that's not true because in other farms there's also research going on, and that's what we did like for 10 years or so. Working with researchers when they called us and say, yeah, okay, we have a project, can we do it on your farm? And I always said, yeah, nice, yeah, you're welcome. But if we already do this, why not add this or this treatment additionally? And then they told me, and that's completely clear, and I fully understand it. I say, well, that's not possible because it's a project, it's financed, there is a budget. You cannot add like 10 more lab costs and so on. And I fully understood that, but then with the time I was really let's say sad because I couldn't implement my ideas. So now I said, okay, we will do a research farm, and now from now on we will do the research, we will initiate the research that we are interested in. And that's what we do, not always, but most of the time. We initiate master theses, we see problems, we see challenges, we have ideas, and then we try to work on these ideas together with our scientists that we know. And that really works out very well. We have three main focus. One is soil health, the other one is agroforestry, and the third one is market gardening, which might be the most promising food production system, which is future-proof, to be honest with you. And I can tell you much more about market gardening because it touches 12 out of 17 SDGs. So it's really a role model for food production systems, and I think we should focus also on market gardening.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Philipp had to leave now, but I would like to share some questions with the audience now, because I think regenerative agriculture and also the border to organic agriculture is very, very interesting and will be getting even more interesting in the next years. So yeah, we formulated some questions that we have for the audience being here. So maybe again you can join the Slido page. And then I need to check if it's working. So one question for me would be if you see that organic farms can be, if an organic farm is always, so to say, regenerative in its being, or if also organic farms need to change something and become more regenerative in a way. It's a small warm-up question. Huh? And I'm happy to see that collaborations are getting in the chat and are strengthening during the presentations. So that's nice to see. Okay, so we see that most of you think that if we have an organic approach and if we have an organic farm, that is already going in line with the regenerative principles. So I will switch to the second question. Where do you see the, so to say, core characteristics of regenerative agriculture? Because we have heard at the beginning of the session that the definitions are quite, there's a variety of definitions currently. There are associations and there are concepts being developed in different continents and on different farms and so on. So I find it very interesting where you see really what are the core aspects of regenerative agriculture. Maybe again as a little bit of framing. So basically the things that I wrote down here are also principles of organic agriculture. So these are the 4 principles of organic agriculture. And it's interesting again to see how big the overlap is between those 2 concepts. So this is also what the majority of you are thinking about this question. And then I would like to ask the question if you see that the growing interest in regenerative agriculture is rather a challenge. So that would be like the point 1, or if it's really an opportunity also for organic farming. Because sometimes the discussions in organic and regenerative are a little bit contradicting with one another and like not coming together so much at the moment. At least I have the feeling. So it's good to see what you think about this. If it's something where we really need to collaborate more with regenerative agriculture coming together with the organic movement, or if those 2 different approaches and maybe also now certifications or standards should be kept separate in a way. And it might be a little bit biased because the majority of people here is coming from research, but I think it's interesting to see that the majority of you think it's more an opportunity than a challenge. And the last question I would like to raise is if regenerative agriculture should really receive also similar subsidies or should be grouped together with organic farming. So if we see, for example, the CAP payments we have mentioned now, also the research projects, if this is something where you think in the future regenerative agriculture should be included then as part of it, or if this might be not a good idea because also of the difficulties that, for example, Philipp mentioned with bigger companies. Okay, that's not so sure, huh? It's not so clear. Maybe Alfred, you could elaborate a little bit on this question as well. Like, where do you see, is it a good idea, or from your perspective, being present in both disciplines, so to say?
Yeah, definitely. I just wanted to unmute myself and just shout something out. I think it definitely we need this, yeah, because if we ask farmers to produce more than just food or produce, but also at the same time produce biodiversity, mitigate climate change, adapt to climate change, prevent flooding. So all these extra services that are not paid, then we have to compensate them in a way, either through higher product prices or additional compensation. So I think it's really important, because what we always say, for example, the example of market gardening, we say what's in the box, because we have a box scheme. So people subscribe to a box. So what's in the box? It's vegetables, it's herbs, it's organic, it's rock certified, it is fresh, it's regional, and it's seasonal. And that's what people pay for, a box of vegetable. But what they not pay for is, at the same time, when we grow vegetables, I try to make it very short, but it's a lot of points. At the same time, when we grow vegetables, we mitigate climate change, we adapt to climate change, we stop the loss of biodiversity, we regenerate the soil, we keep the water body clean, we keep the air clean, we create a resilient food production system, we add regional value, we train people, awareness, consumers. We have a very, very close consumer producer relationship. We produce food that is much more nutritious and more safe, because we do not use any pesticides. So there is so much more, but the consumer doesn't pay for it. So we need someone to compensate the farmer for this job.
Okay, so I hear a clear yes in that case.
Yeah, would say.
Okay. Good. And the very, very last question, because before I really would like to thank our speakers again, is that we will have further online seminars in the Climate Farm Demo project on soil health and biodiversity, as well as on the organic sector. And my question would be if there are certain topics that you would really like to be interested as a follow-up, maybe also, or as other like very specific topics that would be interesting for such a webinar, or if you would have different suggestions for any future seminar. And as I said, I will leave this a little bit open, but I really would like to thank all of the speakers today. I think it was a very interesting perspective to have this like political debate, the practical aspects, and then also the advisory perspective. So I hope it was also useful for you. And would also like to thank very much Lisa as the co-moderator and co-host of the session for organizing this together. And I don't know, Lisa, do you have something to add?
Yes, also a big thank you from my side to all the speakers for this, very insightful presentations. And let us know what you're interested in. So for the future knowledge exchange session that we are organizing. Maybe also together, Lynn, again.
Yes. Yeah, and I think we will send the slides to the participants. I think that's how it's commonly done. And also the video should be available then later at the Climate Farm Demo YouTube channel. But this will take some time for the communication team to cut it and upload it. But I think it should be also uploaded there at the YouTube in case you would like to rewatch or see certain aspects that you might have missed during the session. Yeah. Alfred, last word.
Last word, there is a question in the chat. How many farmers can we afford to stop using synthetic fertilizer and pesticides? Right now, with global population at 8 billion, likely increase to 10 billion. I think this is the question. It's an interesting question, but at the end, we have different tools, different leverages. So on one side, we have to reduce the consumption of meat, and we have to increase the distribution to make a better distribution, and we have to reduce food waste. So then we can easily feed 10 billion people. That's not a question. And we have to reduce the amount of fertilizer. We have to reduce the amount of pesticides. If we look at the last research results that come out from PFAS, for example, if we look at the Netherlands, where we have a huge amount of nitrate and pollution to the groundwater level, we can't go on with this because this is not sustainable. We cannot sustain at the level that we are working. We have to regenerate. We have to make it better. We have to clean the groundwater. We have to regenerate the soils. So it's not a question if we can. The question is how can we afford to keep going like we are going now? But I agree. We need more research. We need more data. We need to increase. We need to stabilize yield, not to increase the yields.
Yeah, thank you very much. There's actually research from FiBL, so Adrian Müller, who calculated that we can feed the world with organic agriculture if we reduce a little bit the livestock and as well the food waste that we currently have globally. So that's right, yeah. So in that case, I would like to thank all of you for participating to today's seminar. And if there are any questions beyond the seminar, feel free to reach out to Lisa or me or also Alfred and Philipp. They posted their contacts in the chat. And hopefully see you at the next online session. Thank you very much.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Goodbye.